A pleasant good evening. Let's fight. Do not attempt to adjust your screen. It is not a mistake. You're not viewing the wrong program. This is In the Ring. My name is Christopher Jones, sitting in for my colleague Sherrod Duncan, who is at ringside this evening. So, of course, like normal, we would want to get as much persons to join the live stream. And while you are here, you take the opportunity to share the live so we'll get as much persons as possible to join the feed and, of course, get the information that they need. Lots of information to share with you tonight, from the brick pelter in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to protest action on the Square of the Revolution today. And of course, I will be joined by two guests and a co-host. I will have in Miss Coretta McDonald, and this time she's wearing her hat as the Member of Parliament with responsibility for labor. And of course, Miss Natasha Singh Lewis. She will be also joining the program. So share the live stream, be part of the ring, and let's fight. And no need to adjust your screen. You are viewing the program. Sherrod Duncan is ringside tonight. So we'll talk about the pocketory and everything else, just as we get as much persons to join the live stream and, of course, share as widely as possible. You know, when you look at a program like In the Ring and you see Sherrod just at a click of a finger, you see him moving and bringing up the topics and so forth, you think, this looks so easy. Put yourself in it, then there's a different story. Christopher Jones is in the ring tonight. Bear pocketory, as Sherrod would say. Bear pocketory. Well, it'll work out. I got the technical team in the background. And, of course, they will be providing me with some of the slides and information that we need. Let me just ensure that the stream is going there. I want to be able to see some of the guests that we have joining us tonight. And of course, I want to be able to give you guys some shout outs wherever you're viewing the program, whether it's in the region or if you are viewing the program further afield. So share the live stream and we will get right into the hot topics as soon as we get enough persons on air. All right. All right, great. We have joining us tonight. And of course, all right, so I now have my view. Good, perfect. All right, so James, all the way from BVI, a pleasant good evening to you. Welcome to In the Ring, or welcome to ringside. We now building up. See, 40 persons are on the field. Lots of information to share with you tonight, from mandatory vaccination that is happening here in Guyana. Persons took to the Square of the Revolution in protest action. Guyanese being denied medical treatment at Guyana's premier health facility. All of this information we will be discussing with you tonight. All of that we will be sharing with you tonight. Good night, pleasant good evening. We say, I don't know if this is a family member, Ms. Jones. A pleasant good evening to you. Welcome. Don't forget, share the live stream. And we will get right into the hot topics. And of course, we will be joined by one of my co-hosts, as I mentioned before. Lots of information. Could you imagine persons went down to the Georgetown Public Hospital today? That is those persons who have malaria, because there's constant treatment that they have to go, whether it's daily or weekly. And today, when they turn up at the Georgetown Public Hospital, only to find that the gate is locked, and the persons there are requesting that they must present their national ID card and a vaccination card. Could you imagine that? Guyanese are now being denied medical treatment at all of the health facilities across the country, all because the government says that you must be vaccinated, even though, as the leader of the opposition correctly posited, that it is a personal choice. And of course, as we mentioned before, the APNU AFC supports vaccination, but must be a personal choice of an individual. And after he or she are satisfied with the information or the research that they would have done, and they are satisfied, then they can take the vaccine. But to impose it mandatory, staff members are being sent home and being told that unless they come back with a vaccination card, they will not be allowed in the workspace. And of course, their salaries will be withdrawn. So all of that we want to discuss with you tonight. And I have, as I mentioned before, later down in the program, my two guests will include Ms. Coretta McDonald, Member of Parliament with responsibility for Labour, and Ms. Natasha Singh Lewis, Shadow Minister for Social Security, will also be on the program. So quickly as we go, share the live stream. I see young Ramatar wants to know, what is this? Well, Ramatar, good evening to you. Welcome to Ringside. And this is Chris Jones sitting in for Sherrod Duncan, who is also ringside this evening. Destiny, how are you doing? Good night to you as well. I see Mentor, you're here too. Great. And all the way from Texas, Houston, Texas. That's good. Welcome to the live stream. Welcome to In the Ring. All right. So as we continue to share the live stream, let's go quickly into the first hot topic out of the region. And this, of course, has to do with St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves. So earlier today, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves left Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Bridgetown, Barbados. And of course, after leaving the hospital, he took to his Facebook page to inform all and sundry in terms of what has transpired. And Mr. Ralph Gonsalves said, and I quote, "It is confirmed that I have no neurological deficit. However, I have suffered a concussion and must be monitored for the next 4 to 6 weeks. But it could have been much more serious," Ralph Gonsalves says. He went on further to state that there is one person whom I hold responsible, and it is not just the person who did the direct act. We can always disagree, but when you cross the line into violence in a democratic society, that is the end. That is Ralph Gonsalves there speaking. So he didn't, in his piece, mention who is the person he holds responsible for the act. But he said not the person who did the actual act, because information coming out from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there is a young woman who has been detained for questioning by the authorities there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But outside of that individual, Ralph Gonsalves is saying that it's not just that person. There is one individual I hold responsible. He didn't went on to state who that individual is, and I don't want to posit a name, but rather I think a few persons will have an idea of who he's referring to. Of course, what has transpired in St. Vincent's and the Grenadines is what we're seeing playing out throughout many parts of the Caribbean and even further afield. In London, there have been, in Madrid, there are massive street demonstration and protests against mandatory vaccination. Unfortunately, we're not seeing those being carried by CNN and so forth, but Al Jazeera did an in-depth investigation, and they brought those information. You see police using water cannon and tear smoke to disperse crowd. There are persons out in the street in their thousands protesting against mandatory vaccination. And of course, we witnessed just today on the Square of the Revolution, you had quite a number of persons who went out and protesting the mandatory vaccination that has been imposed on people in Guyana. But further to that is that not only the mandatory vaccination, but you are also seeing that the Georgetown Public Hospital, for example, persons went there today, as I mentioned earlier, to get their malaria treatment, only to be told that they cannot enter the public hospital unless they present a vaccination card and, of course, the national ID card. So these are the folks who went out on the Square of the Revolution earlier today. And of course, they engaged themselves in a people's protest. We recognize persons from the mining town of Linden and persons from Sophia and so forth. They went out there. Now, their argument is simple. And in fact, their argument mirrors the call being made by quite a few sections of society, that once you provide the information to people as it relates to the vaccine and a person is comfortable, then he or she will go and take the vaccine. But to impose it on them, and that is where you have the fight. And of course, it's not only the type of imposement that is happening, but the one that I mentioned before. You cannot go to the Georgetown Public Hospital for medical treatment. If, for example, God forbid, you or one of your family members who are viewing this program right now, and that person is not ill, but just there and then that person collapsed, and you pick that person up and you rush them to the Georgetown Public Hospital, is it that when they reach there, they have to present a vaccination card in order to be treated? That is the question. And of course, those answers you're not getting because they simply tell you that you must present the voluntary vaccination card. The leader of the opposition and the APNU AFC in a statement, and they iterated this point, and I want to quickly just quote 2 lines from that the APNU AFC supports vaccination, but it must be on a personal choice. So those individuals have that right to choose. They have that right to choose. And the fact that the mandatory imposement is now coming on you, it tells you straight that the PPP has failed in the simple mandate of edifying, educating the populace about the vaccine, and encouraging them to take it. And of course, you know the corruption surrounding the Sputnik V vaccine and the purchase that was made from the Sheikh. Now, when we were expected that this source is directly from Russia, now we learned that it's from some Sheikh. Let me just quickly go now to the Guyana Public Service Union. The Guyana Public Service Union as well has issued a statement calling the new COVID measures or the new COVID rules discriminatory. They stated that the GPSU views this as discriminatory against those who do not wish to be vaccinated. This arbitrary approach is an encroachment on citizens' right to choose and is viewed by the union as an abuse of power. That is the GPSU. They went on further to say the GPSU maintains that should the protocol stated here under be promoted, they would contribute significantly to the reduction rate of infections and, of course, harnessing the spread of COVID-19. Now, the Guyana Public Service Union had issued a statement which they outlined several steps that the administration could take to encourage persons to take the vaccination. And of course, they share that information with the National Task Force. They share that with the Ministry of Health officials and so forth. So they're saying here in the statement that if these protocols that have been submitted by them are taken on board, they will increase the amount of persons who will take the vaccine and, of course, reduce the spread of COVID-19. They went on further to state that notwithstanding the support for vaccination effort, GPSU acknowledges and will fiercely defend the rights of any citizen, particularly its members who are refused treatment and medical intervention. So the GPSU is clear, and this is the point that is being made across this country. Persons want to contribute to ensuring as much people as possible take the vaccine. But of course, these measures that are being put in place, it restricts and it's essentially a turn off to persons who were interested in taking the vaccine to begin with. I want to quickly invite my co-host, Ralph Gonsalves, who was on the Square of the Revolution, to jump in here. And then immediately after, we'll invite the 2 guests who will join us, which will be Miss Coretta McDonald and Miss Natasha Singh Lewis. Randy.
Good night, Sharon. You see, I was about to call you Sharon. Chris. Good night, Chris.
Good night, Randy. All right, so yeah, you had the opportunity today. You did some interviews with the persons on the Square of the Revolution. Walk us back through that, and what were some of the reactions?
You know, Chris, it is quite interesting that, I said today on my program that it feels like we're living in Twilight Zone, some alternate reality where you're being forced to take something and it's as if it's unreal. And the question people had on the Square of the Revolution today, Pastor London was down there and he was asking, is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with me that are these few persons only people seeing that this is wrong? And that is what the sentiment was on the ground today, Sharon. Odessa Primus was out there and she put it over very clearly. She said, listen, if people don't trust you, you can't force them to take something. Exactly. And that is what people were saying out there. And, I'm happy and I'm hoping, of course, more persons don't sit down and allow their rights to be taken from them. And that is what the trust was of that protest action today. And, of course, they're saying that it will continue over the weekend, Chris.
Mm-hmm. As well, too, we notice as well that whereas the PCR tests and the rapid tests, both are accepted. For example, on any airline, whether it be JetBlue or American Airline, I can attest to that because I use it when I went on either one of those flights. But here it is now that the regime is saying to public servants workers that they are not accepting the rapid the rapid test, only the PCR. Now the difference between the two is that the rapid test costs about $5,000 or $6,000, and the PCR test costs around $25,000 or $26,000. Now this is a clear and deliberate attempt to essentially put people in a position in which they know fully well that they cannot pay every week $25,000 for the vaccination.
Yeah.
For the COVID test rather.
For the COVID test. And for the health workers in Region 4, they were instructed that they are not supposed to go to the state health facility to get their test.
Right.
And they must go pay for it 3 times a week. $75,000.
Now, the GPSU as well also stated in, as it relates to the same mandatory COVID test, and they state, and they quoted here that their medical. Okay, so let me just pull this up back from where they stated in terms of the act and the rights of the workers which will be breached. There are rights that are enshrined in the Medical Practitioners Act number 16 of 1991 and the Patient Charter of 2008 by the Ministry of Health. And it also states that any employer who wants to have their workers go and do a test or whatever the case be, the costs must be borne by that entity, not by the workers.
Yes. Exactly.
Right. So immediately here is another breach. Here is another breach. And I mean, one would ask the question in terms of what the union is doing. So this is a statement from the Guyana Public Service Union, and as they mentioned in this section here, is that the GPSU acknowledges and will fiercely defend the rights of every citizen, particularly its members. So we are waiting to see what further action will be taken.
I want to push that point, because there is a talk that, you know what, the unions aren't doing anything. I guess people feel, like the unions need to go out in the street or strike or something. But the unions have been clear. I know that the teachers union would have come out and said they're not supporting mandatory vaccination. Now the GPSU, they're saying they're putting their weight behind it, and I'm hoping that persons are starting to feel as if, you know what, these unions are standing there with them and for them. And of course, you know, the people can come out on the street as they want. They have that right? And of course, I spoke to those persons today, and they said this weekend things not gonna regular. Right? It can't be business as usual on the streets, and people's rights are being taken away from them. So, you know, that is what the people made very, very clear today.
All right. And of course, we did notice a statement from the Minibus Association. Of course, they too have received notices that it's now mandatory that all minibus drivers and conductors and river taxis must be vaccinated in order to ply their trade. I always wanted to, I think perhaps what we will need to do is get a discussion with the association, because I'm trying to figure out how is it that these measures could be imposed on a private operator, because essentially, even though there's a minibus association and so forth, the vehicles are owned and operated and maintained by private individuals. So how does a mandate of that sort, it could be imposed upon them? And I want to know how the Guyana Police Force will enforce such a rule on a private person. And as you rightly mentioned, it is trampling on the rights of citizens and taking away their rights. The rights, we already have several of the rights that have been curtailed in terms of assembling more than how many people in one space and so forth. Notwithstanding that, you still have the very same ministers who are going across the country, gathering hundreds of people together. And the COVID task force is not imposing the regulations on them. Neither is the Guyana Police Force. I want to stress and emphasize this, because those top brass of the Guyana Police Force witnessed in Linden when you had the housing drive and you had hundreds of people gathered together under a tent. Then the National Insurance Scheme with Unish Waldron and Ashley Singh are going about with NIS, and they're gathering hundreds of people. Similarly, the Ministry of Education with the COVID, with the cash grant, which is insufficient, are going around gathering hundreds of people in one space, and it appears that the COVID protocols and measures doesn't apply to them. And then you see,
Yeah.
of course, those private businesses that are aligned to the PPP, Sleeping Hotel, for example, they are allowed to operate from gang to gang, as the locals will say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while all of this is happening, rather than they focus on educating the populace about the vaccine, and of course, remove themselves from corruption, because there is corruption in these same vaccine purchases and so forth, COVID deaths continue to skyrocket. Just today alone, you had one person is the latest victim. I'm trying to find let me just pull this up. It's a 95-year-old woman, and she hails from region number 4. She is Guyana's latest COVID-19 related death, and that now brings the total death thus far to 554. Mind you, for the month of August alone, there have been 8 deaths. Today is only the 6th of August, and thus far, 8 persons would have already died for this month.
Wow.
Meanwhile, today there's 54 new cases, new infections, which is a total now of 22,843 confirmed infections nationally.
Yeah.
We are in a disaster, and this disaster has been brought on by the People's Progressive Party Civic. It has to be this. The blame has to be laid there. And like the point I made when we had the Wednesday picketing exercise on the square, is
Mhm.
that, and even to now, the opposition does not have a seat on the National Task Force. So therefore, the information that people should be privy to, we don't have that information. And if you want to reach herd immunity, it is expected that you will try to get all on board. If
Yeah.
everybody is on board and the information is shared, we can go about the length and breadth of this country and share the information with our constituents. Whether the
Yeah.
PPP likes it or not, half of the country's population are supporters of the AP and UAFC. That is a
Yeah.
reality. And if they don't trust you, because nobody trusts the People's Progressive Party Civic, nobody trusts them, and therefore they look at their leaders to get information. So when you talk about pocketory, this is the full-blown pocketory, because the People's Progressive Party Civic is responsible for the 554 persons who are dead and the 22,843 that have been infected with the COVID disease,
Yeah.
COVID
Chris,
virus.
before we
All right.
before we go,
So
before we go back
yes,
there, I know we had said we were speaking about Ralph Gonsalves, and as we still dealing with some of the hot topics. I want to share with the viewers that video of Ralph coming out of the hospital. I know you read and that piece there that spoke about him coming out of the hospital in his statement, but I want to show the viewers the video
yes.
of that.
The Queen Elizabeth Hospital earlier
Hold on,
today,
hold on,
and of
hold
course,
on, Chris. I think
yeah,
we the
you getting
video
some
is
pocketory.
yeah, we have it. Ah, the video is not
And you know,
cooperating.
yeah. But you know, Randy, just a few days before the incident that occurred here in St. Vincent,
Mm.
Ralph Gonsalves was on a podium and he was expressing his frustration with the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You know,
Yes.
and to quote his word, I'm frustrated, and so forth. But you see, it is the manner in which you approach this. It is the manner in which you approach this. And the same, like how you have these sentiments being expressed, these utterances. You heard Irfan Ali said that those persons who are unvaccinated are worse than COVID-19. The level of disrespect, you know. And then you have Frank Anthony speaking about human rights. And if you're dead, what rights do you have? You know, that is
Yeah.
that is the nonsense we're talking about. And similar sentiments were being expressed by Ralph Gonsalves and many other Caribbean leaders. And that is why it resulted in what you saw there. Man,
Mm.
you can't even call that crisis. It's beyond crisis. It's beyond crisis. So, Randy, I want to quickly bring in Coretta McDonald, because I know this is 8:30 of the hour. So while we make preparation for Coretta McDonald to come on, let me just quickly share with you this, Randy. So the Guyana Police Force extends congratulations to Mr. Robeson Benn, to Mr. Robeson Benn, and they praise him for the commendable work that Robeson Benn would have done in the
What?
past 12 months since assuming the role of Minister of Home Affairs.
Hold
Now,
on, hold
one
on.
would ask the question, if by chance the gold miner dealer that got robbed yesterday, if he would share those sentiments as the Ghana police force, if the family members of Joel and Isaiah Henry, if they will share the same views as the Ghana police force, if the countless persons who have been robbed at gunpoint, people broken into their homes, snatching purse, snatching chain on the road, broad daylight. If any of those persons who have been robbed throughout this country would share the same sentiments of that of the Guyana police force, in which they congratulations, Robeson Benn, you did an excellent job. Everybody every day getting robbed, chain getting snatched, purse getting taken away. Whole day, you did an excellent job according to the Guyana Police Force. And we see why we are in this purgatory. All of these jagabats, including the ones in the Guyana Police Force, that the fact of the matter that they can actually congratulate Robeson Benn, who's had the worst first 12 months of any minister of Home Affairs. The police force congratulate them. It tells you a lot about the police force of itself. To extend congratulation to a failure. And that is why the motion of no confidence has been tabled in the National Assembly by the APNU AFC on both Robeson Benn and Frank Anthony. Could you imagine that? Jagabats is bare pocketory. It's bare pocketory. You know, in fact,
but Chris,
I wanna throw in my caveat here.
Go ahead.
You would say crosses, Sherrod would say jagabats and pocketory. But despite the high crime rate that we have seen over the last 12 months in this country, and the Guyana Police Force can extend congratulations to Robeson Benn. So the Guyana Police Force, in a sense, has said to all of those persons who have been robbed, murdered, homes broken into, Andawa. You know, somebody snatch your chain, Andawa. You know, the gold miner just yesterday lost millions of dollars in cash and gold and diamond, Andawa. You know, the tourists, I think a few days ago, who were walking some part around Stabrook area, in which about 6 or 8 persons pounced on them in broad daylight. Yeah. Police force, the Guyana Police Force, he said to them, Andawa, Robeson Benn doing an excellent job. Congratulations, Robeson.
Let us not forget Sherrod. I keep calling you Sherrod. I'm so accustomed to Sherrod on the program. Chris, let us not forget Chris. This is the same man. This is the same man that was sitting in the seat of Minister of Public Security. Yeah. When what happened in West Coast Barbies happened with those Henry boys. Correct. We can't get anywhere on that as yet. This is the same man that has been sitting there for the last year with all of this madness that's happened in this country. Every day. This is the same man that is sitting in the seat of Minister of Home Affairs, of Public Security, that we have seen the U.S. say, you know what? Y'all be careful when you come to Guyana. Exactly. We see Guyana moving up we in the top 10.
Crime index ladder.
The crime index. Yeah. This is the same man that their own private sector say, you know what? We are worried about crime. Yes. We are worried about crime. And the PPP, and this is why I believe sometimes the PPP live in this alternate reality, where they believe that everything that with this Georgetown, Guyana, or Guyana in itself is a big utopia, and we all singing Kumbaya under the moon and under the sun, and everything is okay. I keep saying it seems as though this fraudulent administration don't know or doesn't know that there is something called Google, and that people can simply type in the computer and see all that is happening.
Yeah.
But the president the other day, decided that he will say that crime is not up, awareness is up.
Awareness is up.
This is what this man sat in front of the media for about 4 hours, picking corn without a script. I never see somebody pick corn without a script. And decided to tell us that crime is not up, is that people are more aware of the crime. What madness is that?
Randy, you spoke in French just now, or did I
No, the
get that
president.
wrong? Did you say the
The
president?
president.
The
The
president.
president.
Okay,
The
the
president.
president. I hear
It's
you. I
French.
hear you. Right. So I mean, so you mentioned Google. Anybody can research and so forth. So you imagine
Mhm.
you Google to get an idea about crime in Guyana, and you see
Mhm.
every single day there's robbery and so forth. You see the
Robbery.
U.S. embassy issues a statement and tell you, listen, you come in Guyana, be careful, you could get robbed. And just recently we saw some tourists being robbed in broad daylight.
The
But
man
there,
returned. The
but
man
here
come
is
back
the
from America. For
but
building
here
house in Kanji, the killie.
that too. But
But the
here
president said that ain't the crime really.
is awareness. It's awareness. But here it is that the Guyana police force, that instrument that has responsibility, they're congratulating Robeson Ben.
For doing what? For doing what? For sitting down at breakdown? The other day I said, you know what? These three ministers on breakdown, something wrong with breakdown. Because these three
It's
ministers
not
on
for one.
breakdown,
No, it's actually five.
it's five of them, but I
You
specifically
got
target
three.
these
You got
three
three
them.
at public health, one at education,
But
and
they
the
got
one at
labor and
oversight.
all. They got labor. I think labor is on breakdown
That's
too.
correct. For six. Yeah.
So something wrong. You should move these ministries on break. I think it's breakdown. Because you got ropes in there. You got Frank at the head of breakdown. You got
Mhm.
Priya 21 breakdown. Right? You got Coco Joe on breakdown too. Preposition Priya at 21. I don't
Mhm.
know. None of them seem to know what is happening. And the police force
Exactly.
congratulating Robeson. They're congratulating Robeson for sitting
Mhm.
down in breakdown. I don't know if he's be eating tea biscuit, Shirley biscuit all day. I don't know what is it. But I know
I
what you're
see.
congratulating me for. I
I
really
see.
don't know.
Exactly. All right. So we want to quickly we could bring in Coretta McDonald, but some other news. I mean, a very sad and disturbing news, in
We do
fact.
have both guests are here, so we bring everybody in, man. The whole cook up.
You're very well.
Good night, good night.
Good evening, gentlemen.
St. Louis,
Good
Coretta
evening,
McDonald,
MP.
welcome to In the
Things
Ring. I
tight.
know I ringside a
Things
lot of the
tight.
persons who a lot of persons who are viewing the program be like, what is happening here? Who is this person and so forth? You know, so I have to tell them there's no need to adjust your screen. You are in the ring. Sharon is out for today and so forth. Ladies, welcome to the program. So
Thank
Thanks,
you,
we
Chris
Chief.
we
and
have been
Randy.
discussing for the past 30 minutes the visa, well, I keep saying visa, but the mandatory vaccination that we've seen being imposed on the Guyanese people. I just essentially, in part, read a statement from the Guyana Public Service Union, of which they stated quite emphatically that the Guyana Public Service Union will fiercely defend the rights of any citizens, and more particularly its members. I know, Coretta, you wear several hats, including that of president of the Guyana Teachers Union, Natasha Singh Lewis as well. I know you wear several hats as well, apart from your work as shadow minister of Social Security. We seen today that outside of the Georgetown Public Hospital, for example, those measures being enforced at the malaria area, in which persons were going in for their treatment and they were essentially denied. After the AP and UFC exposed it on social media about 2 hours after the gates were open, and in fact, I walked right into the public hospital, washed my hands and so forth, and had no restriction. But this will come again on Monday. Your views, I'll start with Coretta from the union's perspective, because we know that there are plans to reopen schools. And of course, there's talk about the teachers must be vaccinated. According to Irfan Ali, the president, he said that those persons who are not vaccinated, they are worse than COVID-19. And according to Ricky Frank Anthony, um, as it relates to human rights, because apparently, well, the PPP never believed in human rights to begin with. But according to Frank Anthony, if you're dead, what human rights do you have? Your views, Coretta.
Chris, good night to you. Good night to Natasha and Randy. And the good night to Sharon. And I'm saying good night to everyone else except Joseph Hamilton, the installed Minister of Labor. But having said that, I want to say that it is illegal. It is illegal for any installed government, any government, as a matter of fact, to want to impose on any citizen things that they don't want. More so this vaccine that we're talking about. And so it's illegal for the government to want to impose vaccines on persons in this country. We should not be taking vaccines under duress. We should not, that should not happen. It's against the law. And the laws of Guyana is there to protect every single citizen. But you know what is amazing? It's amazing that this cabal that we have in occupying government now, when the law suits them, they know the law conveniently. Yeah. So when it's convenient for them, they use the law. And when it's not convenient, they play forget. They don't remember. It doesn't exist. But I want to say from the union standpoint, I heard you reading a statement from the GPSU. We also had statements from the Guyana Teachers Union. And by the way, I'm president of the Guyana Trades Union Congress and General Secretary GTU. Yes. We got statements that were issued by the Guyana Teachers Union as well as the Guyana Trades Union Congress, where we are condemning this act from this cabal government. It is not right. It is wrong. It is illegal. And so we are going to continue to speak to our members and to let them understand that what this government is doing, all they're interested in is the little small piece, the kickback that they're going to be getting. That's all they're interested in. They're not interested in the citizens' well-being. And I say that because we've had so many issues with the Sputnik V vaccines. But yet, this is the vaccines that they're still throwing at Guyanese and saying to you that it's mandatory. You have to take it. You have to take it. If you don't accept the vaccines, you can't go to work. And if you stay away from work, then they're going to be deducting monies from your salaries. Now, what these folks are looking for is confusion, let me say that. And they're looking for madness. Yeah. Because I figure that they're mad. And if you look at what is happening within the Ministry of Health, the persons heading there, I've been saying this over and over and over again. We have 2 geriatrics and a halfway one. No wonder we having these kinds of craziness coming from the Ministry of Health. They're advising the folks on the task force and giving wrong advice to the folks there. But I want to say to us that as citizens, we are going to sound our voices. Every single right-minded citizen in this country will sound their voice. I know that we're not going to have some of the, we're not going to have the guardians of democracy because apparently they got into Jumbie State now and they've disappeared. We're not going to have them. We're not going to have the likes of Jerry Govaya. We're not going to have the likes of Christopher Raman and the others. But every right-minded citizen in this country, citizens who are concerned about their health and who are concerned about their rights as a human being, as an individual, will sound their voices. And we have seen this happening already, where individual citizens are coming out there. We are seeing organizations are coming out there. But you know what, Chris, since last June, and this was on June 5th, 2021, we had a statement coming out from FITOG. And FITOG is the Federation of Independent Trade Unions of Guyana. And this organization, this umbrella body, it covers GAU, NACI, CCW, and the GLU, those 4 unions. And coming from FITOG, since June of this year, we had them condemning this act by private sector companies, condemning it. FITOG that is coming from. And I want to read some little bits from you where the umbrella body said they have noted that the actions of these private sector companies, it run counter the current vaccination program, while they are advocating that educating the public is what is necessary. They are advocating that educating the public is necessary. Mind you, they are saying just the same thing we are saying. We are not against vaccination. We are encouraging persons to go get vaccinated. But what we're against is you mandating people and making it compulsory that if you don't get the vaccine, you can't go to work, you can't receive certain services. And so FITUP continued to say that the Minister of Health, Frank Anthony, sometime back there, he encouraged private sector workers to get vaccinated. But he said that the government's position remains that it would not make inculcation mandatory. So Frank Anthony said this in June, you know, that they are not going to make the vaccination or the vaccines mandatory. And they were saying that to the private sector, don't compel the people to take it. But we've seen, and this is the PPP. They say one thing at one time, and then they say something else at another time. I just want to continue with FITUG. FITUG was further reminding all that no other country is making this mandatory and it should not happen here. And they went on to say, further, FITUG called for these practices, if they are existing, to be abandoned. It added that the union is open to collaborating to advance the rollout of vaccines in a way that is respectful to citizens' rights and their choices. FITUG was saying that in a press release on the issue. Now, you know, and it's disgusting that we're seeing what is happening at this time.
Yeah.
But Chris, the citizens of this country, they will do what they have to do. Yeah. I'll stop there for now. Very
well. I have two questions. I'll come back to you. Natasha, quickly. So, I mean, as your mic is off, just to give you a heads up. So social security, and of course the minister that you shadow. What is your take in terms of the mandatory vaccination being imposed on the citizenry, and especially workers, and the manner in which, because workers are being told that if you don't get vaccine, you ain't getting paid.
So, Chris, I want to ask a question before we go on. Based on the people that we see coming out since Wednesday until now, sounding their disgust at what this government is doing, can you fairly say congratulations to those installed people? Can you fairly say that the installed government really care about the people of Guyana? If they cared and they were doing a fantastic job, you think the people would have been out on the road? Now, let me say to you that the Minister of Human Services is equally culpable as all the other ministers. Just today, she's in Region 6 in a big fancy gathering. That's the point. And police is outside. But guess what? The police is security. The police is not enforcing no COVID regulation there. So the police is actually allowing people and agreeing to this big crowd. So she's equally culpable. But Chris, you see, I want to look at this whole situation, compulsory vaccination, in a broader picture. I can tell you from my research, what I have been doing until now, the PPP is out to increase our indigent community. That means that in Regions 4, Region 7, Region 10, they are going to do everything possible to get rid of the people who are earning a living. And this is one mechanism to do that. Now, when you put them out of a job forcefully, the immunization thing is a strategy, you know. Don't get sidetracked by what's going on. It's a strategy to put people out of a job, to ensure that families are broken. And look at the people that we're talking about. You have to look at a bigger picture. in every realm of government, look at what they're doing. The vaccination is now compulsory, and that's a strategy to put people out of their job. One set of people out of their job. But as Coretta said, that the unions have a position on forced vaccination. And Chris, I too want to endorse that the APNU AFC's position is that we have no problem with vaccination, but it should be at the will of the people. It should be their choice. Now, let me share one experience with you. I would have had my vaccines, and I have had several side effects. Now, when I took my vaccine, the people at the health center told me if I have any other adverse effect other than fever, call them. Because the health center closed up since 3:30 in the afternoon. Who in God's name I call in at 9 o'clock when I'm sweating like hell, when everything started giving me hell to work with? When I can't come off my bed, who am I calling? I say that to say to you that from the onset, what was required is political maturity. And this installed government doesn't have that. Political
Exactly, that's what's
maturity,
lacking.
political maturity would have seen cooperation on all sides, unions, opposition, everybody. Political maturity would have seen us with a public education plan being rolled out by everybody. But you know what? They have
Yes.
absolutely no, and I doubt whether that they have a plan right now. So what their strategy is to force people, and it fits into a larger strategy to disenfranchise Guyanese of their rights.
If I can jump in here quickly, Chris.
All right.
I
So
want to pick up.
I want
I
to
want to
before Randy,
Mm.
go ahead.
I just wanted to pick up on something that Natasha said about persons out of their jobs and this being used as a strategy to force people out their work. I am calling for a simple thing to be done, because I have not seen the people from the estates, the sugar estates. I don't know if I might be wrong. I might be wrong. And Guy Suko might have said to their sugar workers, you can't come and cut the cane if you ain't get vaccines. Whether that, somebody can
And
inform
that
me
is
whether
as
that
of
Guy
today.
Suko has said that. Because here we
They
see
are
the
they
blatant.
are yes.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
there
Here we
have
see
been
the
a
blatant.
statement.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead. It's a delay.
So, no, I was saying essentially, and actually, several reporters have called me following up on that, and they're doing their own investigation. But as at today, August 6th, there was a statement on social media, so we can't verify that it came from Gaisuku, but essentially saying the same thing, that those workers who have not been vaccinated, they cannot return to work and they will not be paid. The question is whether or not, knowing the association of the relationship of Gaisuko and the People's Progressive Party Civic, if it will be enforced on them. And that is essentially what the media have launched their own investigation. And we're hoping over the weekend to see if any enforcement has been done. But Coretta, Natasha, and even Councillor Lowe, I want to throw this out. So throughout today, all over social media, the mandatory vaccination is here, as in right now. I mean, today is Friday, we're going into the weekend, but on Monday, all of those workers, all of those public service workers across the length and breadth of this country will have to make a decision as at Monday. Now, this is where leadership comes in. I'm happy for the statement that you read out from FITOG, GTU, TUC, and the one that I read from the Ghana Public Service Union. But what happens on Monday? And I throw this out to
I'll tell
all
you what
three of you.
I'll tell you
Hearing
what
all of your
Sharon
different
said. Shut the country down. Shut it down.
Yeah.
Sense, better sense got to prevail in this situation.
All right. So, but I mean, essentially from the union's perspective, because essentially these are workers, and the workers fall in some one of those categories. I know currently with marches, that may play up leading into the month of September, but it is before us. Is there like a plan that the unions have over the weekend that will meet and come up with a decision? Because as of Monday, we saw some of the enforcement today. Persons could not get it. Could you imagine persons can't go to the public health facilities for medical treatment? If God forbid that somebody's family falls down tonight, they can't go. I mean, I am wondering how could that be enforced? If a person who is bleeding or badly wounded is taken to GPHC or any of those facilities and they are refused health because they don't have a vaccination card.
Sure, Chris, let me give an example. Today, while the protest was happening at Coffee Square, they had Ministry of Health workers under a tent on the Coffee Square because they couldn't go in the Ministry of Health building.
Yeah.
The Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, the PS went to the workers and said, y'all got until Monday. And I think this is why Chris is asking about Monday. These workers, a lot of them were given a couple of days to figure out if you want the vaccine or you want your job. That is the situation these workers are under. And it's an untenable one. Something has to be done.
Yeah.
Yes, so
correct.
So Chris,
guys,
while we're hearing, are you ready for me there, Chris?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Right. So while we're hearing all of these talks in this corner and that corner and the other corner, the unions have been and this is the GPSU and the Guyana Trades Union Congress. We have been meeting, we have been putting strategies together, and we are saying to our members, you go to work. Let them give you a document that says you can't go to work. You are at work and they are locking you out. So money can be deducted from your salaries because you are there at work. You are at your place of work and your employer is preventing you from going in. Let them present you with a document to say you can't come. But you see, this is the smartness with it. They're not issuing letters. All they're saying, they're given verbal instructions. Go home, and they're locking gates. But our workers will continue to turn up at work. Let them issue you with a letter to say you can't come until you have the vaccination. But like Natasha said, this whole issue is much bigger than just having this vaccination. This is a direct plot to do two things. One, to create suffering. Two, to create confusion in this land. And I can add another one. It's to create a state where persons feel so weak that they'll have to fall on their knees and suck up to everything that this cabal is saying. That is their intention. Now, when we look at what is happening, we have seen them issue threats to the minibus operators, hire car operators, speedboat operators. Now, these three entities, put aside the public servants, these three entities provide public transportation, the service of public transportation, to almost all the public servants who got to go to and from work. Now, if you're demanding that these operators, unless they get their vaccination card or they can produce to you the negative test, they would not be allowed, or they're not going to be allowed to work on the road and to run the river. If you're saying that to them, automatically you're saying to the other public servants, y'all can't come to work either. Because if they can't provide the service, this cabal doesn't have any way or any means of providing that kind of service to our working force, because they've taken the David Granger buses and they've sabotaged them. So they don't have the buses. The boats, they did all sorts of things with them. So they don't have that kind of means to get workers to and from work. So this is where they want to create the confusion. Now, when we look at what is happening with the minibus drivers and the hire car drivers, though many of those persons are driving vehicles that are not theirs. Many of them who own some of these vehicles, they have bank loans to pay. So in actual fact, you're punishing them 1 time, 2 times, 3 times you're punishing them. And you know what? Old people always say, when a cat's back is against the wall, the cat will scratch, the cat will lash out.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want what has happened in St. Vincent to even fly across here. I don't even want a little bit of that air to fly across here. But you know what? If this illegal installed cabal continues to push it, then persons will take matters into their own hands. Because when a man can't feed his family, then that's a totally different story. He ain't got time with police, who say what and who didn't say when. When a man can't provide for his home, it's a different situation. When a single mother can't feed her children, it's a totally different situation. And if this cabal doesn't want to employ the use of sensible strategies, then we would get to a state where we might not be able to control what is happening. I want to say again, the unions are not against the vaccination process. The unions are up in arms with the manner with which this cabal is saying to workers that they must take it. Now, they have not even gone out there. One, the awareness, it's lacking. If I were to give them a grade for awareness, I'd give them 0.1, -1, something like that. -1, something like that I'll give them. Because they've not been doing a whole lot with regards to awareness. Persons are hesitant to take that vaccine because they're scared. They've been hearing so much, they've been reading so much, they've been seeing all sorts of things. And so you have the hesitancy there. What this government was supposed to be doing is to be going out there just the same way they're going out there to distribute the cash grant and to make themselves whatever along the road and in different places. They should be carrying the message about the vaccines. What are the side effects? Why you need to take the vaccines? This vaccine and that vaccine and the other vaccine and the other vaccine. But you're not finding them doing that. And you know what? They are even going now with the kind of trickery that they're always into, because I learned today when they're distributing the $19,000 in Region 4 now at Timeri, while the parents were collecting the $19,000, health officials turned up there with the vaccines to give people. They didn't tell the parents that, but they turned up there. Now they're putting you in a spot where, oh, I'm feeling guilty because I collected $19,000 and look, the people here to give the vaccine and I want to take it. Nonsense. That is not the way it's supposed to be done.
I have an interesting take. We all thought that Schumann had one too many Paiwari when he suggested that you shouldn't give the 19,000 cash grant and house lots to persons who are unvaccinated. We said, oh, Schumann had way too much Paiwari today. But it seems as though Schumann was just the advanced scout for the PPP. Because, right, because essentially that is what the PPP would have done. You have to go into government buildings in many cases to collect this cash grant. You have to go into a government building if you want to go and apply for a house lot. So when you think about it, Schumann was just testing the waters of the PPP. Right?
But you know, let me say this to us. The PPP, they are so hypocritical with everything that they do.
The hypocrites.
They are saying that you cannot go into government ministries, you can't go here and you can't go there if you don't have a vaccine. But they're the same teachers that the installed president said they're more dangerous than the vaccine. If they don't take the vaccine, they're more dangerous than the virus. Those are the same teachers who are not vaccinated that are being used to distribute the $19,000. They're not asking the parents when they're coming in if they're vaccinated, but they're giving the parents the money and they're making a big show about it. So why are you still forcing people to take this vaccine if you're having all these forums and you're not seeking out who should be vaccinated and non-vaccinated? The other thing is, I've seen lots and lots of workshops being planned in ministries, and they're not asking whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. All and sundry, as long as the workshop is being planned for this section or that section within those ministries, all and sundry got to go to these workshops. Why are we making ourselves a fool? If we're sticking to one thing, then we're sticking to one thing. But like you said, Randy, they're throwing the bait out to see whatever fish they're going to catch. But let me say to them, you're going to catch hurry. That's where you're going to catch hurry. Because them patois and the hassles and so, they ain't going to take the kind of nonsense from you. You're going to catch, what the fish name? Catfish. That's where you're going to catch. Catfish and hurry. The other thing going to come.
Right. I want to share with you now that so all of the health workers in Region 6 who have not been vaccinated have received notices that they are not to return to work on Monday. All of them. Wow. All of the health workers in Region 6 that have not been vaccinated.
Well, all of the health workers who are listening to us this evening from all of the regions, your instruction is to go to work. Exactly. If you don't go to work, they have a right to cut your pay. Turn up to work and let them give you their instruction in writing. Turn up to work, everyone.
Yeah. I like that. Indeed, that is the instruction for all. But again, Miss Coretta, Natasha, I want to start to wrap things up essentially. But as I mentioned again, over the weekend, a lot is going to be happening. There's a lot of fear in the society for those persons who are public servant workers. And you see, the issue is real, right? It's literally a bread and butter issue, right? Literally is a bread and butter issue. And these wicked, vindictive PPP administration, first, they don't tell the public that they didn't take the vaccine, some of the ministers. They don't tell you the type of vaccine that is alleged that Irfan and Jack took. And that is what people have to know as well. There are several of those ministers who have not taken any vaccination, any of it, because they share the same view or views as many of the Guyanese people. But yet still, they are imposing it on you. Imposing it on you. And like you guys mentioned earlier before, and just to iterate the point, and I can quote as well the Guyana Public Service Union, the Guyana Teachers Union, the Trade Union Congress, and even FITOG and the APNU AFC, that they stand in support of vaccination across the length and breadth of the country. But it must be a personal choice by an individual after he or she receives sufficient information and they are comfortable. Now, they are, I don't want to call a specific person who took to Facebook this afternoon, and essentially they are pro-vaccine. That is fine. Like us, we're pro-vaccine too. But we are saying that in order for somebody to become a pro-vaccine, he or she must be comfortable and accept it. And you see on social media, a lot of persons are imposing their own belief now on people. And I even brought in the subject about the LGBTQ community. In that, when you had the discourse is still ongoing here in Guyana and across the world by the LGBTQ community, is that you have, for example, the churches, the religious houses, whether it's the mosque or the temple, and they would say that, listen, like in the Bible, it speaks against a relationship between two male or two female and so forth. And the LGBTQ community would say to you that, listen, this is not about your Bible and your beliefs. This is about human rights. And as humans, you have a right to choose who is your partner, who you want to marry, and so forth. That is the argument by the LGBTQ community. But here it is, when it comes to vaccination, you have some of those same persons that say that, listen, go and take the vaccine. Don't worry with what you believe. This is what the scientist says, right? So it was good for the argument to be placed that don't worry with what your Bible or what your Bhagavad Gita or the Quran says. But here is what we're saying, that it is a human right. But here it is, those same persons are now saying to you that, listen, don't worry with what your human rights is about. No, it's not about you, what you want. is what the scientists said. The scientists said this thing is what say you must take it. You understand me? And that is the hypocrisy in all of this. Similarly, if as a supporter of the LGBTQ community, that you support human rights, your God-given right to choose who you want to be partner with, it is so in this case that every individual have their God-given human right to choose whether or not they want the vaccination. But to go on social media and to lash out on persons who have not made a choice, and that is the point, you know. It's not that they're not taking it; they have not made that choice yet, and you have to spoon feed them. All
And
this is new to
bullying
all of
is
us.
not going to make them take it. Bullying is not the strategy.
That's not the
Exactly.
strategy.
And that is the point. When you bully somebody, it's like, oh, you want to fight? Well, let me fight. And they fight
Yeah.
back, so they become more resistant to you. So
Yeah.
what the PvP has essentially done is made more persons more resistant to
Yes.
taking any vaccine. It's like if some people say, well, you know, I ain't want the Sputnik. I go wait when they get the AstraZeneca or the Moderna, and I go take that. But at this rate, on how the PvP is bullying PvPs or that, and so you want to go, I want nothing. And people are now putting that on Facebook. And that is a challenge that you have. That is a challenge that you have. So
I can tell you, Chris, that today some of our head teachers were locked out of the Ministry of Education. They went there to receive pay sheets, and they were asked to produce identification card and their vaccination card. And because they couldn't produce that, they were told, well, we can't deal with you. And I'm saying, if that's the way we're going to go, teachers are the ones who create all professions. And if other professions are going to attempt to disrespect teachers, teachers know how to use the whip. I mean, we always talk about corporal punishment and who against it, but teachers will have to use the whip, and they'll use the whip in different forms. So let's continue to push. Let's continue to push the teachers. Let's continue to push the nurses. Let's continue to push other public servants. Let's continue to push the minibus and the taxi drivers and the speedboat operators. And then we'll have a big party. Let's continue to do it. And I'm hoping that when the party starts and when the music starts to play, whether we have in drum or boom boxes, that this cabal, that they'll have enough sound pads or proof or what you call it, the ear plugs to put in their ears to vend off that kind of music. I hope they'll have it.
You know, Pastor London,
this has gone further, and it's all about survival now. And persons are willing to stand up for their survival. Persons are ready to stand up for so that their rights can be respected, because this Constitution provides for my right and your right and the right of every Guyanese citizen.
Excellent. All right. So I just want to alert the viewers that tomorrow at 12 o'clock, there will be a special program being hosted by my colleague Ralph Gonsalves at 12. And of course, to continue the discussion on the mandatory vaccination and of course steps and measures that will be taken to be put in place as of Monday. I'm being told now, I'm being told now that over the weekend, some activities are being planned. I see by the group that was out at the Square the Revolution, and I think on Monday as well, they're going to be back out there, but of course they will publicize that information. But this discussion can continue. I want to hear from all and sundry. I want to hear from all sides. But that particular point that I made there earlier in terms of human rights, it can't be human rights when it comes to the LGBTQ community, but it's not human rights when it comes to vaccination. It's the same cat suppose. You can't change it. If the LGBTQ community is saying that you can't impose your religious belief on me, I have my human right to determine who my partner must be, then you can't impose what a scientist say on me. I, as a human being, have that right to choose. And you have to allow people to do that. But as we mentioned before, the PPP has dropped the ball, and this is now completely out of control. Because first of all, people don't trust them to begin with as the PPP. And then worse yet, when it came in with the Sputnik V vaccine, and the opposition in the parliament exposed them, and you learned the method in which the vaccines, the Sputnik V, was procured through this middleman, the sheik. So persons become more wary and more untrustworthy of them. And of course, there's information that is being circulated. Final thoughts. I'll start with Counselor and then go with Natasha and then Coretta.
All right, Chris, thank you. Viewers, thank you very much. I want to leave people with just the thought. The shambles that we see unfolding in our country, it is sad, but in many ways not unexpected. The PPP are known for doing things in a haphazard, ad hoc, shambolic manner.
Yeah.
No sort of thinking behind it.
That's good.
We see President. No. The President Jack Deal and President Ali. So sort of communication. He comes out with that press conference. Eventually, President Jack Deal is going to come and he's going to sit down and tell you what he has decided to do with the government. So I don't even know if people listen to Ali anymore. I don't think Ali listens to Ali.
What is an Ali?
But essentially what we're seeing unfolding in Guyana is a result of these people that actually I don't know if they communicate with each other. I don't know if they have cabinet meeting. It doesn't seem so. But it is everybody doing all sort of madness. And then, of course, they have to go take instruction from Jack Deal because that's where the real instruction come from. So because of that chaotic nature of their organization, Guyana is left. You know, people say when tiger and elephant fighting, the grass is feeling squeezed. That's why Guyana is in such a purgatory, to use Sherrod's word, because the government has no idea what they're doing. And that's why people will understand that we need to lay the blame squarely at the feet of this installed cabal. That's all I will say.
Excellent. Natasha.
So I want to leave some guiding thoughts with our viewers this evening. Respect is earned, and you have to respect yourself first before others respect you. If we are to respect each other's rights, then we will come up with a different approach to ensuring that their lives matter. Because ultimately, the installed government is trying to say to people that they care for Guyana. That's why they want to vaccinate everybody so that they can achieve herd immunity. Now listen to me. We have to be our brothers and sisters keepers, and we have to show them that we respect each other.
That's right.
And we respect each other by organizing and mobilizing for our own rights. And so I leave by saying, let us be our brothers and sisters keepers, and let's tell them that if we're not comfortable, then we're not doing it.
Very well. Excellent. Thank you very much, Natasha. Coretta.
Well, Chris, I want to say to all and sundry out there, and especially to our workers, that the union will support you 100%. We got your backs. As long as you decide that you don't want to have that vaccine, nobody is going to force it on you. Nobody will prevent you from being at your workplaces, and nobody will cut your salaries, because we will be there to support you. I want to inform all too that the union, while you might not be hearing a whole lot coming from us, and of course there's this saying that you don't throw out your trump card too early.
That's correct.
There are lots of things that are on stream, and we are going to continue to press on to ensure that every citizen in this country is respected for the choice he or she decides to take. And I want to leave this quote with us. It says, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension. It is the presence of justice." And that's Martin Luther King. True peace is not merely the absence of tension. It is the presence of justice. And we must allow in this country justice to prevail at all times.
Yeah.
You know, it's very sad that we have signed on to all of these human rights conventions, and we are breaking every single one of them when it's convenient for us. But you know what? The Guyanese people will continue to mark this cabal down for all of the injustices that they've been meting out to Guyanese across this country for the last year that they've been in government. I think this is worse than even while they sat there for 23 years, what we've experienced in this last year.
Yeah.
And we will not sit idly by and allow this cabal to destroy this country of ours. The workers will prevail.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much, Natasha Singh Lewis and Coretta McDonald, for being my guests tonight. All right. So quickly, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, it was John Lewis, the Senator in the United States, that says at times you got to get into some good trouble. And particularly as it relates to the infringement of your human rights, which is enshrined in the United Nations Charter. You cannot allow anyone to take away those rights. And you know, the other saying too is that when your neighbor house on fire, throw water on yours. Because you see, it started with one agency, and everybody looked over in that agency and be like, oh my God, why they doing them people down? And then it went to another agency, and like, whoa, they're going over there. And now it's spread to everybody. When your neighbor house on fire, throw water on yours. As stated by my guest tonight, mandatory vaccination is unacceptable. It is a breach of your human rights. As I mentioned earlier before, like the LGBTQ community, and they're advocating for the human rights, the rights as a human to choose who your partner is. In this case with vaccination, it is also a human right, and that persons have that right to choose whether or not they want to take the vaccine. In closing, the APLU, AFC, and those unions represented, and of course by the GTU, have stated and quite lucid that we stand in support of vaccination, but it must be a personal choice of the individuals. Join my colleague Randolph Critchlow tomorrow at 12 o'clock for a special program, which we will have other persons who will be discussing this important topic. On behalf of our colleague Sherrod Duncan, who has been ringside watching on, we'd like to thank you guys very much for viewing In the Ring. Until then, have a pleasant rest of your evening. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.